Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Jerry Lee, and he's going to tell us about his near-death experience. So, Jerry, you good to go?
Hi, guys. My story began in a small coastal town in Texas when I was 15 years old. I bear a bit of guilt explaining to how I got to my near-death experience. I was a youth that wasn't in a good frame of mind due to how life was for me. I wasn't in trouble, but trouble was around me with parents getting divorced and being somewhat abused by one parent. To get started, I was working with a person that worked at my dad's business, and he had a friend that came home from Houston on the weekend. And he had a new drug. Of course, my ordeal was caused by a drug overdose, which I'm embarrassed about, and it's hard to talk about. But we took the drug, and by the way, the drug was PCP. It had never been heard of before. And the three of us went out to the one guy who brought it to his parents' house, and he produced a capsule, and the capsule was clear plastic, and it appeared empty, except for a few white specks stuck to the inside of it. And he warned me twice, this is very strong, we got to watch it. But I thought I was invincible, and I really didn't care. So we cut the capsule in half, and three of us used one half of the dose. After 15 minutes, I didn't feel anything, so I took the other whole half myself, and that's what set the experience off. The next thing I remember, I was laying passed out, face down in a field, in the grass and dirt. And suddenly I'm hovering above myself, looking down on myself. Of course, I'm face down, so I'm looking at the back of my head, etc. And it was bewildering because I didn't know what was going on. And the funny thing is, I had total clarity of thought when this was happening. And I thought it was a dream. But I was confused at looking at the back of myself. I mean, you can stand in front of a mirror and see yourself, but looking at the back of yourself is odd. At the time, I had long hair, and long hair was the rage then. All the guys had it. But I did not wear long hair well. It did not look good on me. And all I could think is I'm looking down on myself, what a mess my hair was. And coupled with the bewilderment of what was going on and why I can see myself, I considered it to be a dream. But as I took my focus off myself, I looked across the field and I could see the grass blowing, ebbing and flowing with the breeze. I could see clusters of trees and the difference. But I noticed that I could detect every single blade of grass moving in unison with the others with incredible clarity. And I thought, what a wondrous thing. This is like no dream I have ever had before. To turning the focus to the trees, which were about probably 50 yards away, suddenly I'm right in front of them, looking with incredible detail. Now, coupled with that, I had a completely peaceful, blissful feeling going on. It's something that really couldn't be described with words. And as I started looking across the field and seeing the trees and stuff, I realized that I could see pretty much in all directions at once. I thought about needing to get back to town to meet up with friends that were more my age, and I had a plan to, and my presence started following the road, but suddenly I realized that I could just think of the friends, and I saw them. I saw a friend named Lynn driving down the main drag in Seadrift. I saw another friend coming out of a grocery store. This was bewildering. I didn't know, how can I just see this? And maintaining that with the whole time and having the clarity of thought was really bewildering to me. And I thought about other things. I thought about my grandmother's place that was 5 miles out in the country, and suddenly I'm there, looking at the horses, the cattle, the garden, everything that I used to win because I spent a lot of time out there. And still taken back by the peaceful feeling, the incredible detail in everything I was seeing. Well, sometime out there, my thoughts crossed to my dad. And suddenly there was my dad in front of me, looking at him. Now, at the time, my dad was in the North Sea working on an oil platform. But yet there he was. And the thing that struck me is he had long hair. It was down to like his shoulders. Now, he was always anti-long hair, anti-hippie, which was the word they used back then. People probably hadn't heard that term in decades. But he was so set against long hair, it was very confusing and bewildering to me to see him with long hair. Oddly enough, when he came home to visit months later and talking to him about it, he mentioned to me, my hair was down to my collar at one point because there's no barbers out on the oil rigs. And I thought to myself, yeah, Dad, I know, I saw you. Of course, I didn't tell him that. How do you tell anyone that? You don't. Well, everything I'd seen to that point, looking across the field, seeing my friends, driving down the bayfront, looking at my grandmother's house, seeing my dad, had all happened in the current timeline. And then it changed, and I started revisiting periods of my life earlier. And I remembered lots of things, but a few of them, just a few, I will share with you. For instance, the ones that I'll share were memories from between 5 and 9 years old. I remember the day I turned 6 years old. That was a big day for me because I was staying with my grandmother, and that was the first day that they gave me permission when I'm out running around that if I saw a snake, because Texas has a lot of snakes, and in the country, there's a lot of elements like that. I had permission to go get the .22 rifle and shoot the snake without getting an adult first. Prior to that, I had dispatched of snakes, but I always had to get the adult. So it was a big day for me. I felt like a big guy. Well, as soon as she gave me that permission, what do? I go looking for a snake. Takes me about an hour, and I find one, harmless little grass snake, about 18 inches long. Went and got the .22 and dispatched of it. My grandmother heard the shot, and here she comes, and she's got a disconcerted look on her face. And I said, Nanny, you told me I could get the gun. And she goes, I know. Well, let's see what you did. And she comes up, she looks at the little snake, and she goes, well, first of all, it's a snake, and it's good you took care of it. But secondly, when you see a snake that size, you need to get the shovel and take care of it and save the bullet. And I thought, darn it, I still got a lot to learn. Another instance I remember was when I was 9 years old. And at 9 years old, I had my own deer rifle. It was a .256 Magnum. And I went out, sat in a tree, shot a deer, field dressed it, and drug it back to a spot where a vehicle could pick it up at 9 years old. Wow. Now, that's the way I was raised. I was completely comfortable around firearms, and I knew all the safety aspects and everything. Of course, when I was dragging the deer, it weighed more than I did, so it'd be 3 foot and rest, 3 foot and rest. But yet it was a big day. Now, of course, I still maintain the clarity of thought and this blissful, peaceful feeling that is just indescribable. It just envelops you. But then I recall an episode that changed that. One time I was at an uncle's house, and I think I was 5 years old. And I went in to use the restroom, and there was a quarter, 25 cents, laying on the counter. And I took it. Now, at the time, I knew right from wrong. I probably even knew the commandment, thou shalt not steal, but I took it anyway. And I put it in my pocket, and I forgot about it. Later on that evening, as I was getting undressed to take a bath before going to bed, the quarter falls out on the floor. My mother hears it. She comes in there. The interrogation begins. And I faced up, told them what I did. And the next day I had to go back out and apologize and take the quarter back and everything. You'd think that'd be the end of the story, but it's not. When I remembered that and relived that, I was overcome with the most profound remorse that anyone can describe. It turned to total sorrow. I was so very sorry that I took that quarter, even though I had given it back. And I've often remembered that in my life. And I feel like that when my number is called to go before the man later, that all my misdeeds are going to be in front of me like a billboard. There will be no hiding from it. You may get away with something in this life, but that doesn't mean you got away with it. It's going to come back and be in front of you. At least it will for me. I feel like I know that. Now, after that thought, I had many others, but they're really not worth sharing. I mean, school trips, things like that. But the next thing I remember is seeing my grandfather. Now, my grandfather had passed away a couple of years earlier, and he came to me. And he was dressed in the same clothes, looking the same way he used to look the last time I remember him. And he was walking in a motion towards me, but yet he never got any closer. And it was kind of odd. But he was close enough for me to see the look on his face, and he was not happy. There was utter disgust in his face for what I had done.
For what caused you to
And
die?
at that point, everything started to come together, and I started to realize this is not a dream, Jerry. And at that time, I noticed another presence. And over to the side, I glanced, and there was a guy there sitting on a log with his arms folded. I did not know this guy. He appeared to be an age of mid-30s, say. Of course, I was 15. And he called me by name. And this was the only spoken words I heard during the whole experience. And he said to me, "What's going on, Jerry?" And it was said to me at first, and I took it more like a greeting, because that is a common phrase used in greetings sometimes. But still, I was bewildered. Who is this man that's calling me by name? And I got the profound feeling from him, this, "Jerry, you have really done it now." And like I said, I had put all this together suddenly, and I realized, Jerry, you're dying. Paw was my grandfather, was standing there. He died. I was at his funeral. You're dying, Jerry. And at that point, I started thinking about my mother. My mother was going through hell. She had a divorce forced on her she didn't want. Being in a small town of 1,000 people and both parents still remaining there, you're on spectacle in front of everybody. But she kept a strong face and supported my sister and I on a teacher's salary without any other help. And I started thinking about her and thinking, my God, this is going to kill her. Regardless of the peaceful feeling that you have and this complete bliss. In the real world that I live in, this is bad. It's very bad. You're 15 and you're dying of a drug overdose, or you're dead already. But at that point, I started fighting it. I just thought, no, no. And as soon as I did that, my grandfather turned around. He took one step and vanished. It was briefly after that I opened my eyes from laying in the field and pushed my head up slightly. Now, I don't know how long I'd been laying there. All I know is I remember where the sun was, the last thing I remember, and I remember where it was when I came conscious, and it had to be 2 or 3 hours that had passed. But laying face down in the grass, I had grass in my mouth, I was spitting it out, I was pulling grass off my face and brushing myself off, still in bewilderness. What did I just go through? As I got up, the other 2 guys that were with me that had done only a fraction of the drug I'd done, I could hear one of them say, "Oh, he's back." But at that point, I couldn't look anybody in the eye. I was so remorseful and had such a solemn feeling that I eventually found someone that could take me back to town, and they drove me around until I had the faculties enough about me to go home. And I remember being at home, and it was about 9:30 on a Saturday night, and that never happened with me. If I came home at all, it would be 3:30 or 4 in the morning. But yet at 9:30, there I was, and my mom was so pleasantly surprised that I was there, and I was going to bed, and she asked me, "Jerry, are you okay?" "Yes, Mom, I'm just a little tired." "Well, okay. And she turned the light off, and all I could think is, my God, Mom, if you only knew. The next day, I stayed home all day just thinking about what had happened to me. And I still didn't know. All I know is this is an experience, and I don't even know how to tell anybody about it. And in fact, I didn't mention it for decades later, tell anybody. And then one day, I was glancing through the sports section, and I saw an article, a small paragraph in the paper, "Memories While Dead" or something like that. And it caught my eye. And it was a promotional paragraph promoting the book Life After Life by Dr. Raymond Moody. And I read about it, and I knew I had to get that book. So I found myself in a town a short time later, and I went to the bookstore, and there it was, and I bought that book. And I brought it home, and I started reading it, and I did not put it down. It took me 2 days to read it, and as soon as I was finished, I read it again. But it made me realize that I wasn't the only one this had happened to. It's happened to others. And I knew it was called a near-death experience. And one of the details I remember about the book was they listed 9 or 10 things that were common occurrences with everybody that had an NDE. And of the 9, I had 7 of them. And at that point, I knew, yeah, that's what you went through. But I kept it inside me for a long time. I did try to share it with a friend one time. And this friend is the type that loves possessions and everything. And that'll come clear as why I mentioned that in a few minutes. But I told him about it, and he was driving, and he looked over at me, and he listened to me. And as soon as I finished, he didn't say a word. He just looked straight ahead and started driving again. Well, you can figure what they're thinking when you share something like that. They think, man, this guy is out there. And maybe I am out there, but everything I told him was true. And I've went on, and just because of the stigma and the response that I expected to get, I never shared it with anybody till I was almost 50 years old, that I started telling other people, and yet to be met with the same result, with people looking at you and assessing you as being somewhere, but not in the right mind, certainly. Now, a couple of months ago, I was on Facebook. It was late at night, and I came across something about Scott Drummond. dead for 20 minutes. And he just had a video come out. And I saw that and I thought, I really need to talk to somebody like that, somebody else that has had this experience. So I did a Facebook search and I found what I thought was him, and it was, and I messaged him. Are you the one that had the NDE from a surgery complication? And within minutes, I had a response back. Yes. And I sent him a message back saying, I really need to talk to you. I went through one also, and I've never been able to talk to anybody about it. And I sent my contact info. Within a minute, the phone was ringing. And for the next hour, him and I were on the phone, and he was telling me about his experience, and I briefly shared mine with him. But there was a couple of things that he mentioned that I want to mention before I've closed, because my story is basically done. He mentioned one, did you leave with any gift? And I say, well, no, I don't think so. And then he told me, he said, well, I left with a gift. I now have the ability to block pain with my mind. And I thought about it and I thought, well, you know, Scott, come to think of it, maybe there is something, because I've noticed that when I'm involved with someone, doing a task, having a conversation, watching a game, whatever it is, someone's in close proximity, I tend to know what the person is thinking. And it's uncanny how much it's come to be true of that. Now, I don't generally bring it up to people. Often I've wanted to just stop somebody in the middle of something and ask him, were you just thinking about this to validate it? But I think I may have been left with a gift of having a more intuition as to where people's minds are. Now, that remains to be seen. Some people could pass it off as, well, it's the obvious thing to think, Jerry, and that might be true. I don't know, but it's possible I left with that gift. But the last thing that I want to share, and this came from Scott, he said, be kind, treat people well. And if you can, atone for any misdeeds in the past. So I would recommend that to people before I close. Be kind to people. Try to be a good person, because it's important. And we need more of that in this world. And it's a practice, and I try to live by, but I'm not perfect. And I do slip sometimes, but I do try to help people as much as I can. And if there's any wrongs that I've done in the past, I try to address them and correct them. So just try to live a friendly life to people. And that would pretty well conclude my story. I know it's short, but that was it. I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jerry. And I know Scott too. We've had a lot of good conversations on Facebook. And just
I'm listening to you.
Okay. And I was just saying, I know Scott as well. We've had a lot of good conversations on Facebook. I hope to have him on here sometime, but he's vacationing. I can't get him to stay home long enough to do it. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and I can't see you right now, but I know you're there.
Yes, I'm putting the phone up to my ear so I can hear you, because
Yeah, I
we're
know.
having
I don't know why
sound
you're having
difficulty on
trouble,
this end.
but that's okay. So thank you so much. And you did an excellent job. You really did. This is the first time telling your story, isn't it?
It's absolutely the first time in this sense. I've told it to a friend before, the one I told you about, and I told it to an aunt, and both of them just looked at me like, who are you and what have you done with Jerry? So, but I take comfort in knowing there's other people out there that believe me now, and I'm quite surprised at how many people have experienced this. And I've here lately been listening to many different other people, and I don't have the story of being in this wondrous place as somebody else. All the geography and everything I seen was like it was where I was living at the time. So I guess to some extent, a lot of the stories are different.
You said that you met 7 of those 9 things on Raymond Moody's list. I read several times before, nobody meets all 9. I think I meet 7 as well.
Yes. Well, the 2 that I didn't meet was one about young children's memories that they can relate after the experience. Of course, I was 15 and not young. And the other one was about cross-cultural. And I'm assuming that means Christian as compared to Hindu or something. I'm not certain. But yeah, those 9, I mean, the out of body, the dead relatives come to you, the peacefulness, the vision, I had all of those. And like I say, they're as real can be.
Yep, yes, they are. Well, I hope this is the first of many times that you tell your story. And I know you were very reluctant to come on. And so I'm glad you were able to get through this and get her done.
Yes, ma'am, I am too. And I'm apologize for the glitches. I'd
worry
never
about it.
done a Zoom meeting before. And if I ever do one again, I will be better prepared.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you for
thank
your
you.
patience, Peggy. You were wonderful.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.